300 events, which is a lot of 3 of them for the weekly quest, which basically just means either setting reminders via the in-game event window, which is a great bit of UI, or just flying around the island for a few hours hoping you are in the right place at the right time. There's no warning or startup period like there is with most event spawns in the map, so if you don't keep your eye on the clock, you will miss it. And if you're down in the vaults, well, when you hit your map key, you're not going to see it if it is active. Meaning, yeah, most people, I'd reckon, don't even know this feature exists. Plus, as many have pointed out, there's an achievement for doing 300 of these. Initially, it was 300, and that would have meant that to get the Cursebreaker title, you would have had to spend 225 hours, aka 300 events, which is a lot of time. Now, of course, if we average those out to 5 minutes, it would still take you 25 hours of actual gameplay. Gameplay that would involve doing 5 quick events over and over and over again, once every 45 minutes, for 25 hours. Thrilling. Now, of course, Blizzard have fixed this. The achievement now needs 150, and progress in each is a lot slower, which means you've actually got time to go to the event. Job done then. Forget about it until the next time we need to make the same fix in the next patch. Great. And I say that because it's not like it's Blizzard's first time shipping a feature with these massive flaws. These glaring issues that are apparent a mile away, that are pointed out on PTR, but that don't get fixed before launch, meaning that we ultimately are paid beta testers for this game. Which doesn't really feel great, because of course, we're not being paid, we're paying them to beta test their own game. Now, of course, when you think about it, there's a chance they had an idea here. The real grind of the patch is down in the vaults, and by the way, it is an excellent bit of old-school MMO grindy goodness. So maybe they just wanted you to use the event tab to set reminders and hop out of the vaults every 45 minutes as a break. Sure, I like the idea, but the sloppiness means you've made a major weekly quest for your expansion a nightmare for people staring at a blank quest marker, and now you've had to rush to fix up the situation. So it's a bit weird upstairs. But that's not to say that downstairs in the vaults has not had its issues. It certainly has. Ones like strikes and incursions breaking. But we can at least chalk those up to patch day server nonsense that they did thankfully iron out rather quickly. And what that amounts to is yet another patch where it feels like Blizzard's team have had to absolutely sprint to the finish, and even doing that, have not had enough time to make sure patch releases at a good level of quality. Well, that's certainly not the end of today's news, because, as it turns out, the game is haunted. If the single button assistant isn't enough for you, how about fully auto-piloted characters? No, that's not a feature in the game, and it probably won't be, but it was actually happening this week. A group running Ruby Life Pools had their Evoker disconnect. Then something weird happened. The Evoker kept on playing, even though they weren't connected to the game. It was not doing great damage, but it was actually hitting buttons. It wasn't just auto-attacking, it was even healing, and it even cast Rescue on another player. Seeing the story break, everyone jumped to the same conclusion. Blizzard must be testing out some new anti-disconnect tech, maybe by giving their NPC player AI the controls of your character should you DC, so that maybe in the time it takes for you to log back into the game, you haven't completely screwed your group. A really good theory, but not quite. Zorbix announced a fix to this, and said that in Blizzard they thought that the AI was somehow hijacking people's characters, but the problem ended up being something else. Hopefully he gets around to doing a write-up, because I don't like thinking about AI ghosts on the servers. Who knows, but personally I like to believe it's the entity from the last 2 Mission Impossible movies, just getting hooked in World of Warcraft instead of being an evil villain. Our next oddity is less of a bug and more of a weird oversight, though it's led to a lot of people doing a lot of degen gameplay, and it's all enabled by Valera's new curio, Dun-Dun's Favor. Dun-Dun's Favor lets you loot curios mid-combat to deal some damage, and you do that by just running over them. That's the mechanic that enables our oversight. The oversight itself comes from Blizzard turning off Valera's XP gain this week, except from these curios. Plus, the new Ring of Glory delve has the curios located close together with very few mobs. Now, you see where I'm going with this?
Hush. Finish
Power
fools.
leveling. People are
The Lord
power
of the
leveling
Will shall sup upon your souls.
Valeera by running around this delve for literally hours on end. It's crazy. All you do is grab Dun-Dun's Favor, which you'll do as you're unlocking your delve tiers all the way up to 11. You just keybind this leave delve macro, and then you just run over all of the curios and just keep on doing it until Valeera hits level 80. It's fast and easy, but comes at the cost of 5 or 6 hours of your life being spent running around in circles. So in my view, not worth it. Though to many, the power is absolutely worth it because it will help them getting the Hall of Fame Delve achievement for beating Azratech. So that's a weird situation going on with Delves, but to follow it up, we've got a weird situation going on with our boy Astalor. One player, Jaden, has already done what a lot of people wish they could: become the Servant of Astalor. That's the title for maxing out the Prey Renown in Season 2. And if you want to know just how much devotion this took, here's a clue. Jaden has made an Astalor plushie and commissioned a custom Astalor body pillow. Clearly, one to taste. Now, it took 80 hunts per level, all the way from level 2 renown up to 10 renown. That's 640 hunts.
Please,
that's
you must lend us
because the
your blood.
random hunt feature is unlocked at rank 2, and those give 50 rep each. She ran 640 normal hunts, taking 2 to 5 minutes each, and within each hunt, almost all the progress was from clicking traps and clicking on the anguish blobs. Being a druid helped out too, for a bunch of reasons, but even then, this was somewhere in the range of 30 to 40 hours of repetition. And that should not have been possible for Season 2, because, well, Season 2 hadn't really been out for long enough to do that. And that is because, mistakenly, this renown was opened up earlier, and that meant that you could just chain run the randoms for 50 rep each. Now, to be honest with you, for everyone's sake, I hope this one isn't rolled back for this player, even if it does technically have a gearing benefit, because at rank 9 you unlock a way to get extra hero gear from the Prey feature. She may actually be the only player in the world able to make use of that, because it doesn't seem anyone else fully made use of this renown being opened a week earlier than it should have been. And that is, of course, the case. You'll notice that the Delver's Journey for Season 2 only opened up when Season 2 started, which was not the case for Prey. And obviously, if it was just cosmetics, it wouldn't really matter, it would just be a little thing. But in this case, it is inconsistent. This time, Astalor rewards gear, and his renown was lying wide open, while the Delve Journey was still locked. Obviously, less important now because Season 2 is out, but it does highlight the somewhat slapdash nature that this game is being built. We've had a fun enough time today looking at all the chaos that's emerged from the patch. Now in the long term, none of this stuff really matters in strictly an internal gameplay sense. At least that's what Blizzard will probably say to justify it. There were issues, we fixed the issues, there you go. And maybe they're right. I mean, dungeons can be rebalanced, bosses can be nerfed, character problems can be corrected over time. But here we are, our third patch of Midnight, and the third patch where playing on launch day would have basically been a mistake. And this sort of thing is important for the game, except that playing in patch day maybe wouldn't be a mistake. It clearly is important because if you don't play in patch day, well then you may miss out on exploits, or FOMO things like getting Fabled Asterek. These nightmarish launches take away from what should just be pure good vibes, and that's because much of the patch is great. Hell, the main patch story, even if we ignore the absolute disaster of an ending, was actually pretty damn good, up until we found out that's where it just stopped and how it just stopped. Many of the campaign quests were detailed and atmospheric in the ways that I desperately would love WoW to lean into more. And sure, there are quibbles elsewhere. The Vault's talents could be a bit more engaging, but the actual content down there is a really well-placed MMO grind that makes you feel like you are in a big world full of other people all playing the game together, which is awesome. Season 2 absolutely has a chance of being a resounding success between, say, the raid gear buffs and the eventually great dungeons, but instead, people are all over Reddit and forums frantically asking how to fix their game, how to make their character move correctly, turn correctly, or perhaps raging at Blizzard for making the same mistakes over and over and over again. I know WoW is an old and complicated game, but it feels like the fabric of the game is just unraveling more and more with each patch. How do elevators go missing without anyone noticing? Do they not have an automated test suite that can find out this sort of problem? Because you can do things like that. It's all rather bizarre and a little depressing, because honestly, I'm loving patch 12.1 as I play it so far. I am excited for the raid, as always, but I am getting too tired of release day being a showcase of things that are going wrong. And I think a lot of people might feel the same way. There's a reason we say that first impressions count, and by now, our first impression of multiple patches back to back has been that World of Warcraft is a game barely held together. And if it's anything like recent times, well, now we will wait. We maybe get another apology from Ian where he says once again that there is not any major problem, that the 8-week patches are actually just fine, and the next time there will be better. Maybe.
Rosa Hawthorne says a peace offering for the sylphs? Were it anyone else, I'd recommend a jar of honey, but I fear that wouldn't get you past their front doorstep, dear. No, their tastes run more to the unusual. Are you, perchance, familiar with milkroot? That's what we call the root of that most fiendish seedkin, the ochu. When chewed, it exudes a cloudy liquid that's said to induce curious visions in the imbiber. You'd not catch me dead trying the stuff, but the sylphs seem to enjoy it to no end. I've not seen an ochu around the comb in quite some time, but I did encounter a suspicious clump of grass the other day. Were you to stimulate it somehow, with some of this amber syrup, for example, you might be surprised at what comes out. Good.
Finaxio of this one cannot